Beth, thank you for your warm reception and response. I have to put a plug in for David's Suburban Auto Group, right, David? He's a car guy too, and I love cars. I appreciate the warmth of your welcome and the chance to speak with you. I guess it's noon. I hate standing between you and your lunch, but I want to talk to you about policy today. This is not exciting and barn burning, but it's important. And I want to give you a chance to think about the various plans I have to get this economy going again, nationally and here in Michigan. I also want to thank the Economic Club for hosting all of us this morning, and I want to thank the folks at the Ford Field for making this space available for us. I guess we had a hard time finding a large enough place to meet, and this certainly is. By the way, congratulations to the Lions on a great season, and to the next great season. It's good to be back in Michigan. This, of course, is where I was born and raised. I was actually born in Harper Hospital, and I grew up here. I remember the first day at kindergarten. I think it was at Hampton School, and there were about 30 kids in our kindergarten class. As I looked around, I imagined their parents had dropped them off at the school each morning, and those parents were confident that our future would be brighter than even the lives that they'd enjoyed. You see, our parents believed in America's promise. They believed that if you built a good home and taught your kids the right kind of values, if you made sure your kids got an education, and you taught them to work hard, that their future could be prosperous and secure. In those days, we all believed that the future was full of possibility and prosperity. We felt that joyful optimism that comes from being raised in a land of opportunity. A place where if you're willing to take risk and work hard and get education, have the right values, anyone can make a better life. We are the land of opportunity. That deep confidence in a better tomorrow is the basic promise of America. But today, that promise is being threatened by a faltering economy and, in my view, by a failed presidency. For 36 months, the unemployment rate has been over 8%. 24 million of our fellow Americans are struggling to find work. There's some 3 million missing workers in America, people who dropped out of the workforce. Home values are down. Foreclosures have been at a record high level. Our national debt is way too high, and the opportunities in the nation are too few. Now, everywhere I've gone in this campaign, I've met Americans who are suffering as a result of the Obama economy. You can see it in their faces, and you can hear it in their voices. They're anxious. They're scared about the future. I've met moms and dads who are struggling to get by. One works the day shift while the other works the night shift so they can barely make ends meet and rarely meet for dinner. I've met kids who are about ready to graduate from college, and they're facing huge student loans and a bad economy. And they're worried that they won't be able to get a job. You've heard, by the way, the new definition of the American dream. It was Dick Armey who said this. He said, the American dream is not owning a home. It's getting your kids out of it. And so everywhere I go, I hear stories that are sad reminders of the failed presidency that we're seeing before us. Now, President Obama said he'd fix 3 things if he became president. First, he said he would hold unemployment below 8% if we let him borrow $787 billion. And, of course, we've had 36 months with that promise having been broken. Then he said he was going to cut the deficit in half. He's doubled it. And third, he said he'd make Medicare and Social Security solvent for future generations. And 3 years later, he has not offered, so far as I'm aware, a single serious proposal for either Medicare or Social Security solvency. We have not seen a failure to communicate. We've seen a failure to lead. And that's why I'm running for president. I want to restore America's promise. That means more jobs, less debt, and smaller government. Now, in the coming campaign, I'm offering more than just a change of policy. I'm offering a dramatic and fundamental change in perspective and philosophy from Washington and for the nation. Now, you may have seen that earlier this week, I put forward a pro-growth tax reform policy to get our economy moving again. Today, this administration is focused on unemployment benefits. But what workers in Michigan and around the country really want is a good job and rising wages. Reforming the tax code is, in my view, one of the surest and quickest ways to achieve that kind of goal. First, I'm going to make an across-the-board 20% reduction in marginal individual income tax rates. 20% down across the board. And now think about this. By reducing the tax on the next dollar earned by all taxpayers, we encourage hard work, we encourage risk-taking, we encourage productivity by allowing Americans to keep more of what they earn. And by the way, the businesses that pay taxes through individual income tax, not the corporate C corporation, but individual income tax entities, they account for, guess what? Guess what percent of American workers work for those kind of businesses? Sub S and LLC, personal income tax companies. Over half of all American workers work in those kind of companies in the United States. So this kind of tax cut encourages small business to hire, to raise wages. And small business is what pulls us out of recessions and get this economy going again. So that's part one. Second, I'm going to make our business taxation, the C corporation taxation, competitive globally. I'm going to reduce the corporate tax rate to 25% from the current 35%. We're the highest in the world. That's got to end. Let's get competitive again. Now, I'm also going to make the R&D tax credit permanent so we can encourage the kind of permanent investment and innovation that drives economic growth long term. And I'm going to end the job-killing repatriation tax. So American companies who do business overseas will bring their profits back home and invest them here. I don't know whether you know what those things are, this repatriation tax. But those who are not familiar with it will find it interesting. If there's an American company like Ford that has a division in China making cars in China and they make profit there, right now if they keep their profit in China and invest there in China, there's no U.S. tax. But if they bring the money home to invest here, then we charge them up to 35% tax. This makes no sense. That's got to end. We've got to end the repatriation tax and bring dollars home. It's estimated to be over $1 trillion sitting offshore that could come back here and create American jobs, and I'll get it done. Now, of course, I'm going to maintain the 15% capital gains tax rate. That's the right course to keep our economy growing. I'll eliminate the tax entirely, by the way. Entirely. Capital gains, interest, and dividends. I'll eliminate that for those with annual income below $200,000. Those low tax rates encourage Americans to save and to invest, and they'll encourage business investment and economic growth. And finally, I will repeal the alternative minimum tax, and I will abolish the death tax. It's simply not fair. Now, let me make it clear. These changes I will not allow to raise the deficit. Stronger economic growth, spending cuts, and broadening the base will offset the reductions. Americans will continue to enjoy the tax benefits that favor important priorities, including home mortgage interest deduction, charitable giving, health care, and savings. But there'll be some changes in the current deductions and exemptions for higher income Americans. Those who receive the greatest benefit from that 20% cut are going to see the most significant limits on some of the deductions and exemptions, so we can keep a code that's progressive. Now, these reforms will grow the economy. They're going to increase wages. They're going to grow jobs. That's what we have to do in this country. Let's get a tax policy that encourages growth and investment and doesn't just penalize people for being successful. Now, let me mention something else. All of you who have experience in business are familiar with the balance sheet. I find it interesting that the largest enterprise in our country, the federal government, doesn't publish a balance sheet. But in fact, we have one. And if we're going to get our fiscal house in order, we also have to fix our national balance sheet. Today we face $62 trillion in unfunded promises in our entitlement programs, Medicare and Social Security being the largest. You know, we talk a lot about the $15 trillion of deficit debt that's been piled up. We got to tackle that debt as well. But it's that $62 trillion of unfunded promises that keeps most of us up at night. Now, a few common sense reforms are going to ensure that we can make good on our promises to our seniors, and we can also save Social Security and Medicare for the future generations. Tax hikes are off the table. There's going to be no change also for the people who are near retirement or currently retired. But younger generations who enter that system have to have a system that's strengthened for the coming century. When it comes to Social Security, what I'll do is slowly raise the retirement age. We're also going to slow the growth in benefits for higher income future retirees. And then when it comes to Medicare, tomorrow's seniors will have a choice among insurance providers, including traditional Medicare offered by the government. And as with Medicare Part D, the private sector will also compete to offer insurance. And they'll provide coverage at the lowest possible price. Seniors will then receive government support to ensure that they can afford that coverage. And with Medicare, like with Social Security, lower income seniors will receive the most generous benefits. Starting in 2022, new retirees will participate in the new system. We'll gradually increase the Medicare eligibility age by 1 month each year. In the long run, the eligibility ages for both programs will be indexed to longevity so that they increase only as fast as life expectancy. Look, those are the kind of common sense changes we have to have. We've got to fix our balance sheet. Instead of having $62 trillion in unfunded commitments hanging over our future, we're going to have a balance sheet that is actually in balance, and it's time to get that done. Now, one more thing. My administration will also make the hundreds of billions of dollars in cuts necessary to reduce spending to 20% of the economy by the end of my first term. And I'm going to cap it at that 20% level. And then without sacrificing our military superiority, I will balance the budget. Now, there are 3 things I got to do to get that done, and they're not easy. First, I'm going to cut programs. I'm going to look at every single government program and ask this question: is this program so critical that it's worth borrowing money from China to pay for it? And if not, I'm going to get rid of it. Of course, I'm going to start with the easiest cut of all. I will get rid of Obamacare. It's a $1 trillion entitlement that we don't want, we can't afford. It's bad medicine, bad policy, and when I'm president, the bad news of Obamacare is going to be over. We're also going to cut things that include some subsidies a lot of people like. I'll cut the subsidies to Amtrak and funding for Planned Parenthood. We'll repeal the union giveaway called the Davis-Bacon Act to save taxpayers, by the way, $100 billion over a 10-year period. So we're going to cut things. That's part one. Part two, we're going to take a lot of federal programs that we're going to keep and we're going to send them back to the states. I'm going to send Medicaid back to the states and cap that program's rate of growth at inflation plus 1%. And I'll do the same for other programs like food stamps and housing subsidies and job training. States are better able to perform these kind of functions. And by the way, once the economy is really growing again, I believe we should return our spending level on these programs to the pre-recession level and then cap their rate of growth and give the states flexibility and control over the programs. Taxpayers that save money and those who need the benefit of these programs will find they're more effective and efficient and responsive if they're run at the state level. Look, there are such differences between states. Being poor in Massachusetts is different than being poor in Mississippi or Montana or Michigan. Let states craft their own programs for their own poor. Welfare reform. It showed us how well a state-led approach can really work. And I want to extend that conservative, small government philosophy across the entire social safety net for those that are in need of our help. Now finally, I've said number one, cut programs to balance the budget. Number two, send programs back to states where we cap their growth rate but let states manage those programs in the way they think best. And the third thing to do is to make the government that remains, that government itself, has to be more efficient. And I'm going to shrink the size of the federal workforce, initially by 10% through attrition. And then I'm going to link the pay of government workers with the pay that exists in the private sector. I don't think public servants should get paid more than the taxpayers are paying for them. Now, this is a plan to get America back on track. Talked about tax policy, lowering tax rates to create growth. Talked about entitlement reform, so our balance sheet gets fixed. Spoken about deficit reduction by cutting spending, cutting programs out, sending programs back to the states, and making government more efficient. But I also want to take just a moment to think about Michigan, what it takes to get Michigan on track, in addition to what's happening at the national level. And that, of course, revolves in many respects around the auto industry. For Michigan to be strong and vital, the auto industry has to be growing and thriving. I hope we learn lessons from the experiences of the past. In my view, the industry got in trouble because the UAW asked for too much, management gave too much and made other mistakes, and the government CAFE standards hurt domestic automakers and provided a benefit to some of the foreign automakers. By the way, the result of those missteps was a cost penalty per car of about $2,000. And I'll tell you, even the best designers and engineers in the world, and they're here, could not overcome that kind of cost disadvantage without the customer being able to tell. And so as we look forward, it's important that the UAW takes care not to impair the long-term future of the industry. And CAFE standards have to be worked out between government and the private sector so they don't become overly burdensome and put our domestic manufacturers at a disadvantage. And the companies, they've got to invest in new technology and take advantage of the massive new markets. The largest markets in the world are going to be Indonesia and Brazil and China and India. We should get, by the way, we should get the government out of General Motors so that the future of that company is determined by the demands of the marketplace, not by the preferences of bureaucrats in Washington. Detroit shouldn't just be the motor city of America. It's got to be the motor city of the entire world. And I want to make sure that happens. What I've described, I believe, are economic plans that will strengthen America and strengthen Michigan by making bold cuts in spending and common sense reforms. We're going to make our government simpler, smaller, and smarter. Through pro-growth policies, we're going to get our economy back on track and get our citizens back to work. And taken together, the plan I'm proposing represents the biggest fundamental change to the federal government in modern history. These are conservative, pro-growth policies that'll not only jumpstart the economy, but they'll stop the dangerous slide of this country into a society where values of entitlement are esteemed higher than values of opportunity. We've got to restore the promise of America with more jobs, less debt, smaller government. I know that President Obama is going to criticize my proposal. So be it. I believe the American people are ready for real leadership. I believe they really do deserve a bold, conservative plan for reform and growth. And unlike the president, I actually have that kind of plan. And I'm not afraid to put it on the table. My plan for America requires leadership, and it calls for sacrifice. It doesn't require a leader to promise bigger and bigger benefits and something for nothing. But let me underscore that. It doesn't require a leader to promise bigger and bigger benefits and free stuff. It requires a leader if you need to call for sacrifice. And if I'm elected president, I promise you this. We're going to restore America's promise. Here in Michigan, the future will once again be full of promise and prosperity. Parents won't have to wonder if their children will have a better life. They know they'll have a better life. Together we can get our debt under control. We can pursue the spending cuts that rein in the deficit, that imperil our future. Entitlement reforms will tackle our long-term debt. And a pro-growth tax policy is going to create jobs and encourage investment again, foster risk-taking and innovation. That's the magic of America. If we pursue the policies I've just described, you're going to see a Michigan with rising home values again. Your kids are going to come out of college and find their jobs there that are consistent with their skills. Businesses will come here because of your unparalleled workforce, engineering skills, extraordinary institutions of higher learning. Michigan will once again be known as the engine of innovation. I'm not promising that every day is going to be easy or there won't be sacrifice and hard work. But I'm promising that every day we'll be on a track to get things better and better. And together we'll make America stronger again. But to do that, I need your help. Next Tuesday, I'll need your vote. That's start one. That's part one. All right. And if you want to make this election about restoring America's greatness, then I hope you'll join me. This is a critical time for our country. I love the the foundation of this extraordinary land. I think it was spoken of and written by the founders of this country. When they wrote the Declaration of Independence, they chose their words carefully. They said, we were endowed by our Creator with our rights. Not by government, not by the king, but by our Creator. And among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That last phrase, the pursuit of happiness we sometimes gloss over in our minds. But it suggests that in America, people would be free to pursue their path in life as they choose. They would not be limited by government or by the circumstance of their birth. And because of these freedoms, our freedom, our liberty, and our right to choose our course in life, America became the place on the planet where people came with innovation and pioneering spirit. That's what built this city and built this state. Pioneers and innovators, hard workers that came to work for them and build this extraordinary land. We have a president today who I think is trying to transform America into something we wouldn't recognize. I don't think that's the right course for America. I love what we are. I want to restore to America the principles that made this the hope of the earth. I want to restore freedom. I want to restore a conviction that people pursuing their own path in life will build a better future. And so I come to you and ask for your help. I want to restore the greatness that's America, relying on the greatness of the American people, their dreams, their visions, their education, their hard work, their innovative spirit. That's what makes us who we are. This is a critical time for America. We're going to have to choose who we are, what the soul of America is going to be. Are we going to be a nation led and governed by a massive government in Washington taking a larger and larger share? Do you realize government today accounts for about 35% of our total economy? Federal, state, and local. 35%. We're inches away from no longer being a free economy. I want to get more jobs and less debt and shrink government. Get back to the American people being able to pursue their course in life. I love this country. I love what it stands for. I love the vision I have of the future. I'm optimistic about the future. I'm convinced that the American people, if they're led by people who are actual leaders, who know how to call for sacrifice, rather than just promise bigger and bigger benefits, that Americans will rise to the occasion. I believe that despite the challenges we have, that if we have a president that will tell the truth and live with integrity, who actually knows how to lead, who, by the way, likes cars, and who will call on the greatness of the American people, we'll see Michigan come back, we'll see America come back, and we'll know that America will remain the hope of the earth. Thank you so much. Great to be with you this morning. Thank you.